G'day guys and welcome to the Centre Bounce, where today we will be going through the power rankings, the top 8 defenders of 2024. Stay tuned. Big J, here we are. We're talking top 8 defenders as well as some honourable mentions to round it all off.
Yeah, and remember guys watching, this is only for January. If reports come in during the preseason, if role changes, things like that happen, especially with our honourable mentions, we're going to change things up. We'll revisit this video again, maybe coming towards March time.
Absolutely. This is a January prediction, as you say, and we will not dilly-dally nor waste any of your time. Over here to Trusty Supercoach, where we will crown who we reckon to be the number one defender of 2024. And I don't think it's much of a secret.
Are we going to start with number 8 first and then go backwards?
I mean, we could. What do you reckon?
I reckon we start with number 8.
Very well.
It's an interesting one. Before we kind of go through the rankings, and we'll do this for all of our videos for the power rankings, that, hey, you don't have to start all of these guys in your team, but you should aim to at least try and get all of these top scorers in your team by the end of the season. First off, we have ranking number 8, which is Big Harry Sheezel. So it's looking like preseason at the moment, there might be a bit of a role change for him. I do think the North Melbourne player will be able to come to the heights that he scored last year and will do better, but it more comes down to role change and things like that. So for me, he's 8th on the list. I'm not sure about you guys watching, but expect big things, but maybe not super duper superstar scores from him.
I reckon Zach Fisher is just no good at football. Zach Fisher is, look, he might be able to serve a role for you playing off halfback, but he's already had one hamstring complaint, and he is certainly not built the same way that a Jack Siebel or an Aaron Hall were, and they both did really well in the role. So I'm not entirely sure that Zach Fisher is going to be the answer for you coming off halfback. I would not be surprised if he goes down with injury. Sheezel has to go to the back line, and you guys can have two incredible users in McKercher and Sheezel propelling you forward. So this is having him being the top 8, I think, is very much predicated on the idea that the Zach Fisher role at halfback is going to fail.
Yeah, maybe true. We'll wait and see, and that's why it's preseason predictions, right?
Absolutely. We then move to our 7th ranked player, who we reckon is going to be Jack Sinclair from the Saints. Now, Jack Sinclair, we've got him here at 7 at the moment because when we look at the statistics, he and some other, like Messiah Wangan and Miller, for example, these two halfbackers for the Saints, they love to play at Docklands under the roof over there now at Marvel Stadium. And when they play away from there, they're not necessarily always shining. Now, how much of that has got to do with the location? How much has that got to do with a very good Jack Steele? It's still too, you can't deny the fact that Jack Sinclair, he plays his best coming off halfback, and the more he spends playing in the midfield, it's not conducive to a lot of his great scores. He's certainly capable of scoring well there, but I think if he's going to be playing more off halfback, he's going to be scoring better, and his run after the bye is really promising. He's got a lot of home games. He's got a lot of games playing at Marvel Stadium, and I think that's where we're going to see a lot of good scoring to see him bump up a slow start to the season and finish in the top 8.
Yeah, and I think that's why we've got him at number 7, is just because of the slow start. I don't see necessarily his scoring dropping at like a huge amount from last year. Maybe a little bit just as St Kilda gets better and the ball might be not in the back line as much. But it really comes down to fixturing and where they play.
Yep. Now, with number 6...
Big Dan Houston. It's an interesting one. It's a guy who has been a real burn man for a lot of people in the past, but he's already 6th ranked in Supercoach in the defense, and we kind of know why. As Port kind of progresses throughout the season, a few things change, and Dan Houston's the one that always gets the ball. Already he's been used as that main distributor of halfback. He did take kick-ins at points throughout the season as well. That's kind of why I've got him here. They've got a lot of really good tall targets in that team now, but he's really still being used as that distributor from the position. That's why he's number 6. We know the roles there. We know the players there. He's still not super old either. So expect decent things from him. And the early, well, not early buy. He misses all the early buys and then has a really good buy as well. So that's really got to come into it.
Yeah, and they've also going to be reshuffling their team a little bit. As you mentioned, they've added a lot to that back line in terms of key position strength. But in terms of halfback, I think they've moved Cleary out of the back line and is going to be playing more on a wing. And so,
I saw that as well.
Yeah, so I think that means that Dan Houston's going to be involved in the play a lot more. There was a lot of discussion last year coming out of Ken Hinkley that he's going to be using Houston more as a half-backer, and I think that's what we saw last year, a lot of big scores. He's certainly got massive scaling of like 60-odd points when he kicked that goal after the siren against us, but he is capable of doing that, playing off half-back and hitting the scoreboard. So I think if they're going to be a much more improved defensive side, it means they'll be able to repel the ball more, get the ball in his hands more. So that's why Dan Houston might end up seeing some more consistency this year.
Yeah, he's going to be a real pod for those that start him early as well, kind of dodging that whole early buy system where so many of these good rookies are playing and they're not playing. So going to be fantastic for those. Hopefully he works out well.
Excellent. Now, fifth player could be a bit of a surprise to some people, but it is Tom Stewart, who we reckon slides a little bit from his lofty height here at third to drop down to 5. A lot of that has got to come with the fact that I think Geelong are just going to continue to slide. And I think Stewart has had an incredible career to date, being one of those great goal players who just capitalize of these cheap disposals in the back line. He's had some great defenders to help him in the past, and he's been a great interceptor coming across. He's had a lot of kick-ins, and he's been flagged to have a move into the midfield. And at his age, as someone who hasn't played midfield, who's barely dabbled in it a little bit, I can't see it being an overly positive move for him, even if it wasn't to eventuate and he is just, and that's just a puff piece and that he's really going to spend more time in the back line. I just think that the Geelong midfield is not going to be able to be as competitive as it used to be in the past. And I think there's going to be a lot of free ball movement moving inside their defensive 50, which will make it really hard for Tom Stewart to intercept. He's still an overall incredible player, but I can't see him matching who we have in our top 4.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys that I think not many people are going to start in Supercoach this year, but are definitely going to aim to go and pick up. His price does seem a little bit inflated, and I really do think that he's going to drop. Definitely top 8 positioning, but top 4, top 3, probably not this year.
Yeah. We move to the number 4 position, and it is the guy who was number 4 last year in Luke Ryan.
It's a crazy one, right? I had the Burn Man Dan Houston. Now we've got the Burn Man Luke Ryan. These two pods that if you had picked them up last year, you would have been laughing. Two players who, their teams are definitely up and down. Freo is looking like they're going to be worse this year. So the ball does mean a lot more in the back line for Freo. Luke Ryan basically takes all the kickouts. Hayden Young took a lot of the kickouts last year, basically 1 and 2 for the team, even though Luke Ryan was about 80% and Young took about 20%. Now Hayden Young is off to the midfield. There's no one there to take the position. So Luke Ryan, I'm expecting some real big scores from him. Maybe not consistent, huge midfield scores, but he does have a big ceiling, and we're going to see it this year.
I think it's also bolstered by the fact that Cox has also gotten injured with a stress fracture in his foot during this preseason, and he's going to miss almost the rest of this preseason, if not the most of it, which means that he will be very unlikely to feature early. Ryan plays for Fremantle, who share an incredible bye with Port Adelaide, so that also bolsters the appeal of selecting a Luke Ryan. Chapman, we know, is going to be rotating between wing and halfback as well. So Luke Ryan really is going to be the main man almost in that back line, and they're going to want to facilitate play through him, I'd imagine, because they've got their captain there, but Luke Ryan is probably their best user if Chapman's going to be on a wing especially. So I think Luke Ryan's going to have some ridiculous scores some weeks. And you're right, it's not going to be every single week, but it will happen enough where he will manage to climb into the top 4.
Yeah, 100%. People have Freo being, potentially 0-5 for the first 5 weeks. And I know there's a lot of Freo people who we've had on the show and people who like us from that side of town. So, yeah, it could be a bad time for them. But we know when North Melbourne had the ball in the back line, the defenders did fantastic. This could be the same for this year for Freo.
Correct. And we're doubling down on Fremantle this year because we're going to move to pick number 3. As you can notice, we're scrolling down a little bit. It's because we're scrolling down to get to one Hayden Young, who we did discuss very briefly there in that Luke Ryan talk as someone who's had a role change and is playing full-time mid.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy. Freo, I think, are kind of going to go with Young, Sarong, and Brayshaw as their momentous group. Every report we've seen says Hayden Young is dominating. We've talked about his stats. Check out our Hayden Young preview video. The kid's going to be a freak. If you don't start him, you're in trouble. Good buy round, good everything. He doesn't kick off the top 2 players purely because he hasn't done it before.
Yeah, and the top 2 players are players who everybody and their mum who knows anything about football can tell you who these people are, and there's not going to be any surprise to many of us who they are. But yeah, Hayden Young, absolutely very exciting to see his future. He ended this season on fire. We're only hoping that he can continue to do it. I reckon this guy, out of all the defenders, is your biggest lock.
Mm-hmm. Mate, people love value.
Yeah, 100%.
He's the value pick of the season.
Correct. We then move to pick number 2, and it is, of course, Mr. James Sicily, the top dog over there at the Hawks. With 114 average last year, I reckon it could have been better if he could stay in the good books, in the umpire's good books, and not keep getting suspended. Hopefully he's learned his lesson, and we can have him for a whole year.
Yeah, and he got tagged by Eddie Ford and ended up with like a 50 or something as well. So
correct.
I think they're going to have a few different positional moves in that team. Some stronger guys coming into the back line and a few players who might have nullified James Sicily's scoring. From all reports, Hardwick is training down the forward line, so maybe that helps him as well. Sicily really hurt me not owning him last year. We know his ceiling. He can go like 170s off no one's business. People are saying Hawthorn are probably going to be around the mark again. There are some other players coming in to take some half-back roles who are really good ball users as well, which only helps to boost Sicily's scoring because he's not just kicking to somebody, he's kicking to someone who can use the ball.
Correct. And there's going to be a bit of a shuffle over there at the Hawks. They've had a lot of change in the offseason with a lot of players moving out of there. I know that Giaf, who's moved out, he's going to be playing on a wing. Carl Amon, someone who we're going to be talking about later, flagged to play a bit more halfback, but also playing a bit on a wing still. You got Ward, who's playing a lot more time in the midfield. So there's a lot of changes happening in that. Even Massimo D'Ambrosio, who they added, also appears to be playing on a wing. So there's a lot of change happening there at the Hawks, and a lot of it between the arcs. Sicily, I think, is one who will continue to be one of the major pillars coming out of the back line. He will still continue to be his intercepting superstar that he is, as well as taking a lot of kick-ins to ensure that he has a good floor. He can rack up points so quickly. He might start a quarter at the start of the game into the negatives because he's given away a free kick, but very quickly you realize that he's at quarter time on 30 points, which is ridiculous. Like, how did you do that? Intercept
marks are worth so much.
100%. And we come, of course, now to the crowning jewel, the number 1 man of 2024, who we think it is.
Yeah. Big Nicky Daicos. He's already dominating preseason. He's coming super fit, super strong, and he misdied on the Brownlow. Don't negate how much influence AFL umpires have on Supercoach scoring, because they'll be like, Nick Daicos, we want you to get the ball. Here's a couple of extra free kicks.
And he'll take free kicks even if they're not for him. There was that went viral last year.
I love to run for the kick-ins.
Correct. So, now Nick Daicos, he is a pig among pigs. It is incredible how much he loves to have the ball in his hands. He will work his opponent overtime in order to ensure that he has the ball in his hands. Collingwood love having him be involved in the play. And there is no reason why this guy doesn't just continue to go from strength to strength with another preseason under his belt. And as you mentioned, they're not messing around at Collingwood. They want to go back to back. They want to win number 17. And Nick Daicos is up in everyone's face. Degoe's face. Who was the guy that got knocked out? The defender again? He also had a very dangerous tackle as well on not Darcy Moore. Maynard. There was someone else as well that he had a really big confrontation with as well, a dangerous tackle. So I know Collingwood supporters are absolutely screaming at the TV. I'm sorry, I hate your team to bits. But Nick Daicos is an absolute superstar, and you can't deny this guy's talent. I reckon he can push 120 average this year.
Yeah, he's got a really big ceiling too. We look at his scores, 149, 145. Obviously, a lot of teams on the other end of that, 149 as well. So we know the scoring's there. I think guys like Pendlebury are going to slowly start taking a bit of a step back. Darcy Moore, probably a little bit of a step back as well. Nick Daicos is coming in. He's going to dominate everyone. If you don't start him, you better hope to get him in very early, because it's really only that early buy and potential Finn McGuinness tag that is stopping people from picking him.
Absolutely. And then we get to the honorable mentions, the people that couldn't fit here in the top 8. These are some options that, you could get for cheap that aren't going to break the bank and who could serve really well for you. And here they are.
Yeah. So we've got Jordan Ridley, potentially if Ben Mackay, well, we know he's coming in. If his role really stops Ridley from getting that key position, like what stopped him last year, opens up all the intercepts, opens up a lot more ball distributing as well from Ridley, could end up getting a really high score.
Correct. Same thing with Nick Martin. I promise there's no Essendon bias here, which is why these two are the first two here. It's just they're genuine mentions here. Nick Martin, who we flagged in previous videos, as well as that video that I did with JD. If you haven't watched that, we've had a lot of amazing feedback over there about that one. Nick Martin has been training almost exclusively with the defenders, playing as a halfback for us. We want to get the ball moving quickly. We want to have Nick Martin be involved in the play because he's a dynamic player with great ball use. So if Nick Martin plays that halfback role for us, he could give us some sensational scores.
Yeah. Lockie Whitfield, fantastic player from GWS. I think the team's only going to get stronger after not making the grand final last year. He seems to be pushing in a bit more of a mid-half-back role where he's scoring. What was it last year, Joe?
He won 107 post-buy last year, and that would have put him in the top 8 this year.
Yeah. So GWS only getting stronger means better for Lockie Whitfield. We know he's always been around the mark. If that happens again this year, mate, watch out.
Correct. And Carl Amon, who you guys would have seen, I did a video on him as well as having him in my team. Carl Amon, when he played halfback in the end of last year, when he played those games, he went absolutely crazy. He averaged well and truly in the top 6 defenders. If he can maintain that role at halfback, then he will be really pushing it. However, he isn't in the top 8 because of the potential risk that he has of playing more on a wing where he will go back to averaging 80s odds. So that's why Carl Amon is an honourable mention here.
Yeah, big watch and say for him, but at his price, coming in under 500k, could be a bit of a sneaky one.
So let us know, guys, what do you think of these top 8 selections as well as our honourable mentions? Let us know in the comments down below if we have missed anyone that you think is a fair shout for top 8.
Yeah, and let us know down in the comments, who are you guys picking as well? Which ones have you guys seen? Does Daicos' kind of early buy and potential tag keep him away? Or are you happy to ride the wave like everyone else?
Exactly. It seems to be the year of to Daicos or not to Daicos, which is going to be a major dividing factor when it comes to all of our starting teams. He's not in my team at the moment. I am trying to avoid early buy players as much as I can. However, round 0, if he dominates, geez, I just have to pick him then.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a lot the same with these guys. Joe, what do we have coming out?
Mate, we're going to be doing these sort of predictions as well, our power rankings for all the other lines. Maybe not so much for the ruck line. They're obviously not going to be as long. Yeah. But for all the other lines, we'll certainly be giving our predictions for who the top ranked players are. You would have already also seen that video announcing our team comp like we did last year. So make sure you head on over to that if you haven't watched it already to be involved to win some awesome prizes.
Yeah. Stay tuned for more content, guys. join the group, had some fun. Remember, here at the Centre Bounce, we do the hard work so you don't have to. Bye for now.
Bye.